Hello and welcome to Mediascope. Today, joining me from Baghdad is Elijah Magnier. Elijah Magnier is a senior political risk analyst and a chief editor with in-depth experience in the Middle East. Mr. Magnier, welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Magnier, you've been on the field, and I know you have some very important notes. So we're in the third day of the operation, and it seems that it will have major effects for the days to come. How far back has the Kurdish Peshmerga forces retreated?
The Kurdish Peshmerga under Barzani command have retreated to the 2003 line, decided during the U.S. occupation of Iraq in 2003, under the command, 2003-2004, under the command of Paul Bremer. And so they pulled out of all the areas. They moved in and they took control of after the attack of ISIS in 2014.
Okay, so, and how far is the Iraqi government planning to force the advance?
The Iraqi government is taking in control of all the areas outside Kurdistan, and also will take in control inside Erbil, Suleimaniye and the Hook of the border crossing, the main airports, and all the exit entrance to the autonomous area of Kurdistan. That is quoted, agreed, and approved within the Iraqi constitution. And the Prime Minister of Iraq, Haider Abadi, declared that he's going to implement the constitution and with Kurdistan as it is agreed. So therefore, it is up to the federal police and federal security forces to take control of all the entry and exit to the country, which is Iraq as a whole, including Kurdistan, because Kurdistan is Iraq. And it's no longer up to the Peshmerga to control the exit and entry. On the borders with Kurdistan, Turkey, the borders with Sinjar and Syria, and the borders with Iran on the side of Suleimaniye.
Okay, on Monday morning when the operations first began, there were media reports, Kurdish-oriented media reports, claiming that it was the Talabani forces that were retreating and there was some sort of a deal made between the PUK and the government. But today we read that Patrick Cockburn from The Independent reported that both PUK and KDP had made some sort of an agreement. Do you have any information on that?
Yes. Pavel Talabani is the son of the late President Jalal Talabani, agreed from the day one to put his Peshmerga forces, because now we have two Peshmerga forces. Not all Peshmerga are under Barzani. The Peshmerga under Talabani and another Peshmerga under Barzani. So the Peshmerga under Talabani, from the day one, the son of Jalal Talabani declared that his forces are under the command of the commander-in-chief of the Iraqi army, that is the Prime Minister Haider Abadi. That agreement was reached the day before between Talabani and Abadi, to stand down and not to follow the Barzani adventure in confronting the Iraqi security forces. Now, when Barzani saw the determination of the Iraqi Prime Minister to recover all the Iraqi land under the army control and the security forces, he had only one choice but to agree to pull up without putting up any fight to the 2003 agreement as stated in the Constitution. So he reached another agreement with the Iraqi forces and the government of Baghdad that he's going to pull out without a fight. Of course, from the first day, there were a few casualties. I think around 16 or 17 Peshmerga were killed, only because they decided to confront, fire upon the Iraqi army. And the Iraqi army had the clear instruction not to open fire unless they are fired at. And these Peshmerga fired at the Iraqi army, so they replied, and they killed 16, but they took all wounded to their own hospital and look after them, because the Peshmerga are still Iraqis.
Okay, so there were almost no clashes, am I right?
Yes, almost no clashes, yes.
And how are the people of the region reacting to these developments?
Well, if you look at all the areas under the control of the Iraqi army, the population is extremely happy for two reasons. First, because the Peshmerga under Barzani were imposing their control on different ethnicity that didn't like the ruling of Barzani, particularly in the area of Sinjar that used to be occupied and inhabited by the Yazidi that were kicked out and betrayed by the Peshmerga of Barzani when ISIS moved in 2014. And we see the Kirkuk is not only Kurd, it's divided between Kurds, Turkmen, Arabs, and all the different ethnicity of Iraq. For be ruled by one side of the Iraqi Kurds who wants the independence, forcing it upon the others living in the same country was not very welcome. But the second part is most of the population in Iraq are who live in poverty. They just want to live in peace. And of course, there is no force better than regular forces to control the country that is made of different ethnicity, and the population can deal with a reference that is the Baghdad government or whoever represents the Baghdad government on the ground. Therefore, it's much easier to deal with a state rather than with militia.
On Monday, we were receiving footage of many civilians fleeing from Kirkuk. Are they coming back, or what's the situation in Kirkuk right now?
From day one, the Peshmerga under Barzani command pulled out and they retrieved to Erbil. Nobody's coming back. The only area that they kept under their command are a couple of oil fields. Among these, the Bani Haqqan, one of the richest oil fields in the area of Kirkuk, and they put it on fire before pulling out yesterday, but then they ran away and they left it to the Iraqi government. Like the oil of Iraq doesn't belong to the Kurds included, because it also belongs to Iraqis, Kurds, as it belongs to Iraqi Arabs. So they put it on fire, they set it on fire, and they left, and now they've dealt with it. So no, there is no return of Peshmerga, Barzani in the area that they have retrieved since yesterday.
And one of the areas that the Iraqi forces took control was Sinjar and the border region with Syria. I'm assuming this will have impacts on Syria's unity as well.
Yes, that's a very good point. Indeed, the regaining of the control upon Sinjar and Rabia crossing is very important, because from the day one of the announcement of the referendum and the will to create an independent Kurdistan state, we saw immediately the reaction of the Syrian Kurds saying, even if Baghdad closes the road, we will open ours to the Kurdish Iraqi. And now they can't do that. And not only they can't do that because there are Iraqi regular forces on the ground and along the borders, but so they are themselves trapped by Turkey in the north, by Iraq in the west, in the east, sorry, by Turkey again in the west, because Turkey moved into Tel Abyad and all the Syrian area to stop the Kurds in Syria from having their own state that is called Rojava, and by the Syrian regular governmental troops in the north. So they are now surrounded, and the only way for them to breathe are the few military airports the Americans have established. And I don't think the IATA or any other country would like to start flying to Kurdistan, Syria, just to please the Kurds in Africa.
And there were reports that there are PKK units within the region as well. How are they acting?
The PKK spread in Kirkuk from day one, and they are in Sinjar. They were in Sinjar, no longer the case now. And the YPG in Syria are the branch of the PKK. So yes, the PKK are there, and they were willing to fight, and they were willing to support Barzani in his rebellion against the Iraqi government. But when they saw they were left alone by the Talabani troops and by the same Barzani Peshmerga who pulled out, they're not going to fight alone.
And do you have any updates on the situation in Shingal?
In Sinjar, there are the regular troops now. The old mayor is still there, and the Yazidi are coming back, and the government is sending federal police to control the area to make sure that the Yazidi are safe and they can return to their home, and only the inhabitants of Sinjar will be able to enter the city, and no one else from outside the city.
Okay, I want to ask the involvement of the Hashd Shabi forces. After they take the cities, do they go out, or what's the involvement of their forces?
The Popular Mobilization Units at Hashd Shabi are part of the Iraqi security forces. So they are part with the army, they are part with the federal police, and another part with different other branches of the security troops. According to the Iraqi parliament, they were integrated fully last year within the body of the Iraqi army. So saying Hashd Shabi or saying the counterterrorism unit or the 9th Army Division is exactly the same thing. But with one difference, is when I saw the few of the Barzani envoy to the Middle East, when they were trying to inquire about the reaction of different countries to the announcement of their independence, the only concern they had is the reaction of Hashd Shabi, because these people are ideologically motivated. But today they're not more or less than the same Iraqi army or the counterterrorism unit, because today the Iraqi forces are all motivated as one single body against whoever wants to divide Iraq, and particularly against ISIS.
And another point is the future of the region and the regional governments. I saw your article today explaining that there will be a before Kirkuk and after Kirkuk situation. Can you explain your expectations?
Well, Sani condemned him when he announced the day he declared the referendum and the beginning of the split, that he no longer recognizes the Article 140 that gave the Kurdish autonomy some privileges. And throughout the years, because the Peshmerga were supported by the Americans and the Western countries, since 1991, during the Gulf War, and because Kurdistan enjoyed a particularly special situation, everybody was flirting and cushioning Kurdistan and looking after it and making sure that Barzani is not upset, that his demands are fulfilled, and as much as possible, Baghdad tried to come close to the demand of Barzani. What happened is, when Barzani decided to go ahead with the referendum, it's first because he was promised by around 80 countries that they would support him, because no one has predicted the reaction of the Prime Minister Haidar Abadi, that he's going to send forces, including inside Kirkuk. Not even the Grand Ayatollah Sistani thought about the possibility of Abadi sending the forces inside the city. But because Abadi did that, and because Barzani is losing his position and also his privileges, now the first thing the central government is going to do is to send people who control all the accounts, all the expenditure of the oil that Kirkuk oil was sucked Erbil, and was spent, the money was spent by Erbil without giving any account to Baghdad, and all the other accounts that related to the communication system, because you have also the problem of correct and the problem of the fees that Erbil needs to pay back, that because they are using the communication facilities without paying a penny. They paid one single rate and they didn't pay the other two, although they're saying they made $900 million in the first few years, but they didn't pay Baghdad anything. So all these accounts will surface now and will emerge, and Erbil will be accountable for that, because I don't think the Iraqi parliament will forgive the Iraqi government to allow Barzani to get away with it. So everybody is going to pay what he needs to pay according to the law. And if there are money that were stolen by Erbil, then they have to respond for that. Therefore, the privilege Barzani used to enjoy until October 2017, before the operation of Kirkuk, are no longer standing after Kirkuk.
And what impacts will there be on the regional government basis? I know there have been some struggles within the internal groups as well.
Nobody likes losers. Barzani has lost the war and has lost his battle. Not only the battle of referendum, but the entire war for the Kurdish people. Because he could have waited until the end of ISIS. The way that he took advantage of the government forces busy in fighting ISIS and declared his referendum and his intention to divide Iraq, this is something that is not going to be forgivable. Therefore, the countries around Iraq who wishes to see Iraq divided, Turkey and Syria divided, because they have the biggest Kurdish city, today immediately aligned themselves behind Iraq, because the government of Iraq is one, and because nobody is going to stand with someone who lost al-Barzani. Therefore, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, France, Europe, everybody came together and congratulated on the unity of Iraq, and nobody returned to Barzani and say, oh, we're sorry, we feel pity for what happened to you, because the consequences are very obvious. Therefore, the positive outcome will come also Syria. So Syria will hugely benefit from that, because now the Kurds of Syria, they saw what happened to the Kurds of Iraq, who are much stronger. They benefit much more support from the international community. They have much more means. They have more oil, more gas. They have a good infrastructure, and they have 5 to 6 million people living in Kurdistan, Iraq, and they see what happened to them. So immediately they have to reconsider their policy, and they have to reconsider the American. They have to reconsider of being American proxies and keeping a distance from Damascus, and they will regain contact with Damascus sooner or later. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be very soon.
I understand. Mr. Magnier, thank you for joining us. It's been great having you.
It's a pleasure.
Today we discussed the unfolding developments in Iraq. Thank you for watching.